start. The Planning Commission has made various estimates about our resources and they are based on a great deal of thinking and calculation. Nevertheless, they depend on so many uncertain factors. A person who is more optimistically inclined may make a better estimate, better in the sense of more hopeful estimate, while a pessimistic may take a less hopeful estimate. Nobody can challenge it. For my part, I have an invincible feeling that in the final analysis, the resources of India are considerable in our people's capacity, ability, and energy, and the question arises how to reach them and how to tap them to the best advantage. I think this can be done by the realization by the people themselves that it is worth while doing so by their full cooperation and the like. It can never be done by government decree or by an order up from above. Therefore, it becomes important that our people should realize and understand fully what this process of planning is. Therefore, we tried to a considerable extent to get the cooperation of as many people as possible, even at the district level, apart from a large number of groups of various kinds. I think it may be well said that India is very conscious of planning today. I was reading a foreigner's book the other day in which he says that in India you cannot get away from this planning business. He had written it in slight irritation. Whatever you talk about, somehow they lead you to the question of planning as though everything depended on planning everywhere. Well, whether his irritation was justified or not, I was glad to read that a person with no great sympathy for what we were doing felt enveloped by some kind of an atmosphere of planning. Everybody can talk of planning, of course, everybody who talks of planning may know very little about planning. That is not the point, but it is true that India is very much planning conscious, and I think it is a great gain. When I say planning conscious, I mean, of course, planning conscious in the democratic structure that we possess. That is, we are proceeding with democratic planning. I am not criticizing any country that may not plan or any country that plans in some other way, authoritarian or some other way. It is none of my business to criticize other countries. They have to meet their problems and it is up to them to decide how to meet them. They can judge their own people. But so far as we are concerned in this country, people believe that we should endeavor to plan by the democratic method. Planning in a small way has often been done and is often done elsewhere. Planning in a really big way has thus far only been done more or less by the authoritarian approach, and the question arises how far a non authoritarian and democratic approach can succeed in this kind of planning. I believe it can, and not only that, I believe it can ultimately succeed better, nor perhaps in yielding such great results quickly, but in laying a surer foundation and more effective foundation not only for plant growth but for the type of society which we wish to develop in this country. Now we talk about the future in terms of socialist pattern of society and that can be interrupted in a variety of ways. I would beg this house to try to consider these great problems without using as far as possible words which have an emotional connotation because then it becomes a little difficult for us to argue about the real thing. We want a society in this country where there is equality, where there is social cohesion, where there are no firm classes separated from each other, and where there as opportunity for every single individual. Naturally, how far an individual takes advantage of that authority, opportunity depends a great deal on that individual, on his physical or mental or spiritual or whatever it is make up because everybody is now alike. Stop. It is obvious that everybody is not either mentally or physically alike, but we should always ensure the same measure of opportunity to everyone. Now, it is not enough to say that we shall ensure the same measure of opportunity if the measure of opportunity is so low that there is a practical no opportunity. We have to produce wealth because only out of that can we produce the things that are necessary for people to have that opportunity we crave for. So it comes around to our producing the things that we require. When we use the word wealth, of course, there is no significance except in regard to the physical things that we require, whatever we may produce require, whether it is food or clothing or housing or hundreds and thousands of other things that are necessary. Education, health, and all that are the things that we require and that we want to place before everyone. How do we do that? There was considerable argument about a year ago about what was called physical planning and financial planning as if there was an inherent contradiction between the two. Many people thought that the use of this term physical planning was dangerous and was meant to turn our approach in a wrong and harmful direction. Now, I do not understand how there can be any planning of any kind without physical planning. Obviously, whatever you may plan, you have to plan for the goods, you have to plan for food. Stop.
The national savings drive, as you know, sir, has a very important place in the present scheme of things, particularly in view of the present conditions of our national economy when we have to raise resources in a non inflationary manner. We have done everything to streamline the organization, and we have tried to get the cooperation of the state governments by providing greater incentives and linking the whole drive with the local schemes and accrual of resources to the states. It has been decided that whatever revenue accrue as a result of the intensification of the national savings derive two-thirds of the net amount would go to the states. We have also decided that we will meet 50% of the additional expenditure to be incurred by the various state governments. I am trying to point out, sir, that this drive is at a point where it is gathering momentum and we expect much more from it. I do not think that at this stage we should burden the already overburdened posts and telegraphs department with the administration of this big national scheme. It would not be advisable. Another point was that the P&T department was running at a loss and that it would minimize the loss of this department if this national savings scheme is entrusted to this department by which it will get the commission. I would like to point out, sir, that at present a very substantial part of the national savings certificates are being sold through the post offices. Postal savings certificates from the bulk of the small savings and the commission for them goes to the P&T department. During the last 3 years, an average of 2 crores has gone to the P&T department. The P&T department is already getting some revenue from this, and in order to popularize this scheme and in order to make it reach the regular areas, it is necessary to intensify the scheme under the present setup, that is the central government, the national advisory committee, the state governments, etc. Rather than to burden the posts and telegraphs department with this additional task. Another point that he made was regarding a separate budget for the P&T department just as the railways. Sir, the whole question of having a separate budget is a misnomer or a misdescription. During the last few years, as a result of the demand in Parliament, the budget memorandum as well as the annual financial statements have been elaborated and made clearer still to the layman by the addition of the explanatory memoranda and by showing the commercial accounts separately. If you read Article 112 of the Constitution, you will find that it provides for a consolidated fund into which all the revenues will be credited and from which all expenditure will be met. If you see the budget papers, you will find the railway revenues and expenditure finding a place in the annual financial statement. There is nothing like separate budgeting, although the mode of presentation may be different. Furthermore, these commercial departments are either incorporated under a special act of parliament or are incorporated under the Indian Companies Act. Parliament has delegated powers so that it has not to present the detailed accounting to the Parliament. It has only concerned itself with the investments or the loans if the government makes any, and so accounts and financial statements are presented in a general form. Even therefore, on that score, the point that the honorable member has raised does not and much of basis. He said something about the size and weight of the postcards. He said that if they could be reduced, much of the handling charges may be reduced. This involves a lot of programs because our postcards have been having a particular size for the last so many years, and if we have to change the size, we will have to change the machinery which produces them. We produce about 100 cases per day, that is about 34 lakh 56,000 postcards every day, and we will have to change the machinery entirely. This machinery will have to be imported, which would mean foreign exchange, which is so very difficult to obtain at the present moment. Similarly, the paper boards that comes will have to be changed in specification, and the manufacturers will in turn have to change their machinery. It is a very involved process, and I think it would not be at the present moment a particular proposition to change the size of the postcards. However advantageous it might mean, the honorable member suggested our making the cards lighter so that weight may be less. This also is not practicable because, as you know, the postcard is of a particular thickness, and through experience we have found that to be of great value. The postcard is a bit roughly handled, is sorting. It passes from place to place. Stop.